we have. Okay, took the words out of my mouth. I don't need to state anything more other than it's being recorded, and that you are consenting to have your likeness and comments recorded and posted on YouTube. Roll call. Myself, if people would just announce their presence, please. John?
John LeBlanc.
Matt? Do you want to acknowledge that you are online? Well, Matt's turned his speaker off.
Yes, Matthew.
Oh, there we are. Okay,
go.
Barb.
Thank you.
Thank
Present.
you. Courtney.
Yes, present, thank you.
Jeff, you're here. Mary, you disappeared. I saw your picture up here a minute ago. Are you
I
still
did
with
not
us?
intentionally disappear.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mary, you're here. Thank you.
There.
All right, I think that's the roll call. I have no opening remarks to make about this other than it is a special meeting having been called by Jeff to discuss matters concerning the property in question, 85 Queen. So I would ask that if there's any pecuniary interests, they be disclosed at this time. And if there are none, we'll move ahead to the committee reports. And I see that we need a motion to receive the report. Could I have a motion concerning what is now known as 47 Whitcomb Way, the old Stewart farmhouse, which was my error, was 66 Queen, not as previously stated. So could I have a motion that we receive this report?
I
Yeah,
move.
I've got it.
Okay, seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Jeff, would you introduce the report and discuss what you need to discuss, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Arnold. This special meeting of the Heritage Committee has been called to provide the committee with information related to the structure located at 47 Whitcomb Way, previously municipal addressed as 66 Queen Street. While no action or decision is required from the committee, it's important under the Heritage Act that the committee be informed of heritage matters occurring in the community. This meeting also serves to provide the public with community information that may be of public interest. Staff are available during this meeting to help answer questions relating to the committee's role and authority in situations like this, as well as potential next steps. As the committee will recall, and as the staff report highlights, the committee has twice previously commented on matters regarding this property. First in 2018 to consider the heritage impact assessment and the subsequent demolition permit in 2019. Today in attendance are both the Township Chief Building Official as well as the Township's Municipal Clerk to answer any questions the committee may have. Also in attendance is Stephanie Saliba, the property owner who is registered as a delegate for today's meeting. At this time, Chair, I would recommend that the committee pass a motion to permit Stephanie's delegation before proceeding on into the details of the report.
So moved. Could I have
I
could have someone
second.
make that motion? Thanks, Mary. Seconder?
Mhm.
I'll second it then. All in favor? Aye.
Favor.
Okay, carried. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Carry on.
Great. So if I could just ask the clerk to move Stephanie from the attendees over to the panelists to make her presentation. It looks like, Chair Arnold, that Stephanie's on camera here, so we'll just ask Stephanie if you're okay with that to continue, to begin actually her presentation, not to continue, sorry.
Hi, guys.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming, first of all, and spending so much time with me last week. I think what Jeff's prepared for us today really touches on everything that I was hoping to say. I think it's very detailed and it includes all the information that we need moving forward. I didn't really prepare a presentation for everybody. I did attach some documents to the end. They're not well wrote. I was quite emotional and got it done quick, but it does touch on my intentions moving forward. If we do see this property this house having to come down, which once we review everything, that's the direction it seems to be going in. I do see that there's a heritage meeting in October. I would love to circle back on ways, I mean, it'll be here before we know it. If we do find this house coming down, I would like to circle back in all the ways that we can move in honoring the history that was, using the materials that we can salvage, and using them in the new build, and other ideas too. You know, I've been thinking of ways in which if the house has to come down, we could honor it with stones somewhere. You know, like there's so much in this house that obviously was forged from the land that I would hate to see go anywhere. So that's my intentions moving forward. I think I really clearly stated my feelings and in the letters and list, and that's about it. Other than thanks for everybody and working on this property as long as you guys have. There's so much about it that I'm still learning. But that's really all. I don't have much else to say at this point.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate that. Jeff, would you like to carry it forward from here? I mean, I think we've all received the reports that have been prepared. Are there any further comments or questions that people have on those reports? Jeff, do you have any further comments to make?
I guess the only comment I would make, Chair Arnold, is that staff are available if there are questions towards staff. And I see Stephanie's still on the screen. I'm not sure, Stephanie, if you're available for questions or of the committee as well.
Of course,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, we're here. Let's talk about our concerns and where we'd like to see things go, right?
Okay. Anyone on the committee like to make some comments? Mary, John, Matt?
I would dearly like to make some comments. Am I commenting, hello, to the delegate, or am I commenting on the report?
I guess you can comment on anything you like, Mary.
Okay,
You're
well,
not you're not restricted.
first of all, I would like to, communicate my regrets to the homeowner for what clearly has been a terrible experience, and acknowledge that you went into this with objectives that were very much in line with this committee's hope for the future of this property. And so I appreciate your equally broken heart about this. And I would also like it to be put on the record that the developer did not live up to his requirements in the draft of subdivision regarding the upkeep of this property while it was empty and while it was waiting for development. And I think that that really contributed to the demolition of this building. And in future, and I don't know what the property standards people have to say about this or the building inspectors, but in future, I would like to make sure that this does not happen again. As a past chair of this committee, I asked on several occasions to speak to the developer, to inspect the property, to make sure that he was following the list of requirements as outlined in the draft, I guess the approved draft of subdivision. And he refused to allow us access, and then eventually just completely stopped replying to my requests. So I think that this, in my experience of sitting on many heritage committees, is something that It's called demolition by neglect. And it occurs frequently, and it is always a consequence of lack of maintenance of empty buildings. And just finally to say that it was not that the developer was unaware of what those requirements were. We communicated them to him very explicitly, and I offered further ongoing assistance in that regard. And mostly it's about keeping moisture and humidity out of a building, because that's what encourages rot. And there, I can't say it I don't think any more clearly than that.
Sorry, first heritage meeting. I'm not really sure how this works, but I appreciate everything you said, because there was a moment, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed. I thought to myself, where was the follow through? You know, where was the accountability? Where was the town? And again, I mean this in no disrespect to anybody, but I was mortified to see it in such sad state and now to have to come down. I mean, if this was our intent, we would have bought elsewhere and not paid for the insurance for such an old property, and not, so to have gone into something with such heart, and then to have seen that over the last, years and years, that there was nothing, and then reports, and I wasn't sure where the accountability was. At this point, I'm just, I've pulled myself together, and I'm like, okay, well, it is what it is. Now we just have to focus on how to move forward. But I'm so glad you said that, because there are so many other properties in Puslinch that are absolutely stunning, that I'm sure hold more history than I'm even aware of, all over the place, Milton, everywhere. And I worked in restoration for many years, so I appreciate preserving the process of preservation. And I too, although I'm not a part of a committee and I haven't moved to town yet, I would like to see that this not happen to another home of its age. I mean, like this, the land in itself speaks. It's sad that a house that was forged from its ground just was left there to rot.
Mhm. And if I can just, through you, Mr. Chair, say that in 2006, when this house was sold, it was in fine shape. And it had survived quite well for 150 years. And in 15 years, it's collapsed. So I don't know what perhaps Mr. Bunn can tell us, or someone else can tell us, how we go about effectively avoiding this with other properties in the future in the township. And also, I just want, I will stop talking in a minute, but this property, in my mind, was absolutely an essential part of our built history. It was built by one of the first European settlers in the township. And the Kalfas family has an indelible imprint on this township. And to lose the family home in this way is a tragedy in my mind. So there.
I agree.
Mhm, mhm.
Thank you, Mary. Your points are well taken. Stephanie, I have a curiosity question. I'm looking at the pictures right now of the
Sure.
demolition. What kind of equipment was brought in there? There's a massive hole behind the house that I don't recall being there, being that, as Mary stated, we were denied permission to access the house, but we did walk around it. And we were very aware that the brick annex that had been attached to the back of the house was really had no architectural merit, or as far as we knew, any cultural merit attached to the building.
Mhm.
But it appears as though a massive piece of equipment has been used here to tear down what was not a very substantial structure. I'm very curious about it. And you must, I should make note that, and Mary had alluded to it, as a committee, we are an advisory committee. We have no power. We can't order anything to happen. So we're really reporting to council as to situations that we look at and try and advise council correctly. Matt, if you'd be, am I correct in my summation of that in a sort of a thumbnail sketch?
Yes,
Sure.
but I'd probably defer to staff, either the clerk or deputy clerk to
Yeah. So
correctly answer that.
So it's, sorry, Stephanie, if you, it just go back to my curiosity question.
The,
I guess what were they doing back there?
so it was my husband, the owner of the property as well. The first hole over to your left is a
Mhm.
cellar entrance. So when we removed lath and plaster, it was very clear that the deterioration of the wood was absolutely crazy. And now we're in there and we're walking and we're moving, and the structural beams on the main level that are accessible in the basement
Yes.
required a lot to hold up. We needed to gain access in there to hold up, to add in supports. So
I
we
see.
didn't
Okay.
create the hole in the
Okay.
foundation.
Yeah,
It was
understood.
the cellar door that we went in through with a little tiny skid steer.
Understood.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah, okay. That clarifies why there was such a massive hole.
And,
But that's how you had to access it.
Yeah, and
Okay.
unfortunately, the interior basement access, you can see in videos that I've taken that I can share with the committee
No,
at a
no, it's
later
fine.
date or whatever. We have a video, and the basement stairs, like the stairs to get in there, they were non-existent. The half of them were gone, some of them, there were 2 basement accesses inside the home that were in extremely poor shape because the basement had so much water in it for so long. So those wooden stairs at the bottom were completely just rotted. So in order to access the basement, you had to do it from the cellar door outside, which had been left open for probably a very long time. So before we purchased the home, we had to remove all that water in just to have our structural engineer go in there to determine what kind of damage, moisture and whatnot was there. In doing so, you can see where, well, you can't, but we could see where those big, beautiful beams that were taken from the property, they go right into the stone. There's wood in the stone and they go right into it and tie into it like,
No, I understand. I
you know,
understand
like
that.
it ties
No, I
right
understand that.
here at
I
the wall,
understand that
right?
construction. Yeah.
They were essentially rotting from the wall. So in order for us to safely continue, we had to get in there, lift the weight
shore
of
it
that
all
main
up.
Yeah,
Understood.
make sure it didn't come down.
No,
Right?
no,
Sometimes when you
understood. I
get
mean,
into
if I
situations like this, you have to move quickly. You don't
You-
really have time to delegate and talk and you
No,
just have to
no,
get
no,
in
no.
there and work, right?
So Stephanie, promise you, you don't
Yeah.
have to explain your actions.
Well, you know, I've
at
spent
all. I
obviously
think you
many
guys-
nights since.
You did what you had to do or tried to do.
Yeah.
But as Mary said, I'm really sorry that it ended up like this. It not only is it, it not only emotionally upsetting when something like this that you've bought falls down, it also kind of changes what you're going to do with the property from here on in.
Yeah.
John, do you-
And on
do you
honoring
like-
what
do you-
is.
Do you have any comments, John, on this? You looked at this, we've all looked at this property over the years. As Mary said, we were all very fond of that place. However, John, do you have any comments?
Well, absolutely. When, we started this several years ago and we did the Heritage Impact Assessment. I always wondered about the point that Mary, raised about the enforcement of the conditions that were put in that impact assessment. And, as, we attempted to go in and just to look at the property, and we were kind of stymied by doing that. The only way that this type of situation is not going to recur is if we get some element of teeth into a situation like this, where there's a heritage impact assessment and there's conditions that are put on the owner, especially if the owner's a developer. I don't know, Matt, like, it's been said that we have no power, but somebody must have some power, because to just, let a property go down like this and nothing anybody else could do is just watch it happen. That can't be acceptable. There's got to be some way to go back on the owner and look at the conditions of the HIA and do something about it. I think we need at least some recommendations out of this on how we can put a little bit more muscle into this type of thing to avoid this type of tragedy from happening again.
Can I speak to that, John?
Yes, of
For
course,
sure.
Mary.
I'll lower my hand now. Well, I think that the property standards perhaps could have looked into this. And I'm not sure in this municipality how that operates. But that would have been one method of tracking this, put it that way. And I don't really understand. I don't know what one might call what the terms of the contract were between the developer and the township as they were spelled out, whether there were to be some kind of series of inspections that would have been helpful, which would have made the rest of his development condition on passing those inspections. Of course, had the property been designated, then that would have been probably part of that designation would have process would have taken care of those steps. Nonetheless, I'd like to know, since we really don't have power, who in the township would have in this case. And another question, if I may, directed at the homeowner is, I have had discussions with other historians in the township who insist that that brick annex preceded the stone building. And was there any sense that the building was actually being shored up by that brick annex, and that's how it contributed to the collapse?
When he removed Dave, the owner, we removed level by level slowly because of what's behind it. And when we did, I believe in a sense it was because, first of all, the foundation for that brick addition was it was just poured around this big, massive granite stone, which obviously over time would have worked in keeping that foundation basement and everything there. And then when we removed the walls exposing behind the stairwell, because they had it was the original home, stairwell, and then the kitchen for the farmhand. When you went up the stairs, it was all what's that wood? Paneling. It was all paneling. When we removed the paneling, essentially there was like no mortar. So, and we found this through the house too, that they were very, like, for example, additions went on and they were like this, and then just mortared on the outside. They weren't tied in whatsoever. And that was kind of what we noticed when taking it down. So when you look at the pictures, you can see a very clean fall at certain sections. Essentially, there was nothing tying anything in there. And I would believe that over time, that stone would have used that brick addition as its means of staying up. Right. And then again, removing lath and plaster. And although we were very careful in everything we did, we were the first to get in there and start moving things. Right. But yeah, still on site, actually, there's a rubble pile outside of the safety fencing. And some of that rubble is what we've kind of pulled in hopes of using elsewhere. Well, you can see that it's mortared on one side and just really exposed stone on the other. If you were to take a stick and just kind of like bang at it, and again, this was all just lime mortar, right? Like with all this moisture and the water, what happens to a lime mortar base, right? It just deteriorates. So I don't know if it was if that lack of mortar was because water ran down there over the years, or if it just was a lack of mortar.
Mhm.
But essentially, when we took it off, rubbles were falling, like it was falling down. We did have, I guess, an over secure sense that it was like a 2-foot stone. Like we felt confident in it that it was, excuse my language, but essentially a brick shit house, you know, like it felt so strong. And then, yeah, when we got back the next morning, that entire wall right down to that foundation was gone. And you can see such a clean fall, right? So again, I do believe that, yes, it just to touch on what Mary was talking about as well, is it in it not being where it was, I still think that even if a new tarp was put on and the cellar was closed, that we still would have seen substantial deterioration on the property. But because, and like the other problem with it is even if it didn't experience the amount of moisture and rot that it has, it structurally really wasn't sound. Like it was essentially one dwelling and they just kept adding on walls
Mhm.
to each other, to each other, to each other without tying them in. So we would have run into a major problem in trying to figure out how to get in there and chip away to essentially tie those in to move forward for the next 150 years, right? So even despite the rain and the rot, there were other issues still very present in the way that home was built over its time.
Mhm.
So like, as much as I agree, the developer avoids me now completely and I rely on him. He will not answer my calls. He will not return my emails. And I'm sorry that you experienced that for so long, Mary, because it's driving me crazy. But he's not all to blame. You know, they didn't have engineers and structural, the farmer did his best. And it probably wouldn't have lasted on another 150 years had it have even been watertight. Simply because, again, there was no, I have pictures of inside too. If anybody afterwards wants to send me their email, I can most definitely send more pictures, but you can see that nothing is tied in.
Mhm.
Which was alarming to me before we lost that wall. Honestly, I was thinking, oh my goodness, what do we do now?
Mhm.
We discovered a lot
Mhm. And
taking that lath and plaster down.
John, if I can just say, like restoration architects are familiar with this issue, and it's amazing what they can mediate. Um, and I don't think you had access to one, and I don't think the developer did. And so what you're telling us then is that there was some existing vulnerabilities in the building that then perhaps were exacerbated by the humidity and the water and,
And
the
also
access.
working, yeah.
Pardon?
And working, yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know, like starting the work on the home. Mhm.
Yeah, certainly the developer was advised to keep the building ventilated to get rid of all the moisture.
And it was full of mold. It was like, I'm also a mold remediation technician.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, there's fungus, there was mold, there was algae,
Mhm.
there was more going on there now. And again, luckily it was all wet, so we were able to safely remove that. But it,
Okay,
it's really unfortunate.
yeah, it is. Thank you. That's.
Thank you, Mary.
Mhm.
Do any of the other committee members care to make any comments at this point? If not, Jeff, would you like to make any comment on the engineering reports? I'm sure we've all looked at them. They are they are uniformly negative in my opinion, on the chances of salvaging this building whatsoever. I guess there's going to be a lot of rubble stone available, but am I drawing an incorrect conclusion from that, Jeff? You going to speak for the township, or what does the township want to do here?
So through you, Chair Arnold, I'm not an engineer, so I don't want to pretend to be one or try to interpret something. We do have our chief building official on the call who has been out at the site and is much more familiar with what's been going on in terms of the structure. I do want to just point out before we move on to maybe Andrew speaking, through you, Chair, it looks like Barb might have tried to have a comment. I'm not sure, Barb, I just seen you moving or actioning towards that. So I just want to give you an opportunity before we continue on.
Yeah, I can't see that.
Sorry about that. No.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you for that, Jeff, and sorry, John. I just wanted to, and my apologies to Stephanie as well, because the point I'm going to make is a little bit more about heritage impact assessment. And for this property, this was the first time that this committee had been actively involved in such a document. And if I recall, we spent a great deal of time with representatives of this company to come up with a form to make it accurate and to make it responsible. I believe we had at least 2 meetings, and there was a lot of work. Mary in particular spent a lot of hours working with this consulting company to come up with a workable document that we had hoped going forward would be the model for us to use. With this outcome, I'm a little dismayed at all this. We've done all this hard work, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that we have representation from the county as well, assisting us with this document. So I want to know too about accountability and about the value of these documents and the efforts that this committee put into it, and how we can be more responsive and better equipped. And one of my understanding that the process of going through this was to assist staff in making, pardon me, but at the counter decisions for both the developer and the homeowner coming in. And somehow we have failed here. So what is the corrective, and how do we improve on this? And I'm asking that of, I guess, Courtney and of Jeff, and perhaps Matthew. You probably haven't had another document like this either, but we need to be better.
Thanks, Barb. Well said. Jeff, would you care to pick up on that, or Courtney?
No, I don't.
Oh, thank you, Barb, for the question. So I think I agree with most of what's been said here today, that there was an awful lot of work that went into reviewing the HIA and commenting on it. The structural reports were done. The committee made some comments and were invested in the process, and attempting to preserve as much of this property as possible with the developer. And this information was provided to council, who ultimately were the authority to approve the subdivision agreement that went forward. And I think what we've learned from looking back as staff on this is that perhaps there's some areas where the wording of the agreement can be improved to help us identify if inspections are needed, if there are any more obligations put on the developer throughout the process, and have the agreement point to that specifically. I know the HIA and the structural report had various recommendations and very detailed of what was the committee and council were looking for. I feel like perhaps the wording in the agreement could be revised if we were ever to see something like this again, to assist staff and the developer and the potential purchaser, so that it was more clear what the expectations were going through the process.
Any further comments that anyone would like to make?
Yes, thank you. If I could, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Sorry, I can't, I'm not getting everybody showing on the screen. I did hear your voice. Yes, of course, Matt, please proceed.
But I don't want to step on Barb's toes if she had any follow-up questions or comments. So I can wait until because I appreciate what she was saying.
Go ahead, Councillor Blummer, and thank you, Courtney, for that explanation. I appreciate that perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this certainly is a learning opportunity, and it was our first time through doing a heritage assessment. And it's a transition. I think it's fair to see this as a transition from wholly relying on goodwill to moving into something that when I look back on it, it served to not only inform the land, whoever owned the property, whether it was a developer or the ultimate owner, of what the heritage features, the important heritage features were on the property, and through the engineering reports that were done over time, or initially, how to preserve the building in its form that it was, so that best use could be made of the structure, and that goodwill portion carried on from there. It was, looking back, it was clearly done as inform the landowner what needed to be done, what was valuable, and the requirement was in the development agreement to do those assessments so that the owner would have full awareness of what was needed, so that it would be in their purview to enact those. I think the committee had an expectation that some of those outcomes from the heritage impact assessment and the engineering report might have made it into the ultimate subdivision agreement. As Courtney mentioned, that isn't what happened, and moving them from just goodwill to accountable actions. And I think this is where some of the learning takes place. And I expect that as we, in the future meetings of the committee, we may get some staff reports helping us understand these processes. Because even myself, I wasn't clear as to what the expectations were as we went through this, even though it's abundantly clear looking backwards what the obligations that came out of this were. And so I think it is a learning opportunity, both for the committee members, council, and for staff. And as we kind of move from that wholly goodwill without any legislative backup to having a registry, and in the future, if there's other more developments that may include a structure like this, how to turn that goodwill into accountable action. So I don't think it's not necessarily I don't want to say it's not a bad news story, because there's a lot of pain going around here, but we can't change where we are on this one, but we can certainly change how we approach the next one, and learn from what's happened here. So thank you, staff. I don't know if staff have any comments they want to make regarding some of the comments that were made about accountability and obligations under the development agreement or under the plan of subdivision. But anyhow, that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bulmer. That was, I think you're right. There's not, it's yesterday's story now, unfortunately, but certainly this is a topic that I think that as a committee we want to address perhaps at our next meeting, rather than at this point in time. This is probably not the appropriate venue to discuss this in any great length. Any other committee member like to make any further comments at this point? And if not, maybe we could turn it back to Jeff. Comments on the engineering reports, or to our building representative as to what the next steps are, certainly for us at this point.
John?
Yes, Mary.
Stephanie had her hand up. I don't know where she's gone right now. But
Yeah, I keep losing people here. I'm sorry. I do apologize if I'm missing the hand up, because sometimes people come and go on my screen. Stephanie, did you have any comments that you would like to make at this point?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily yesterday's news. I mean, we still have artifacts in the ground dating back to 1830 when the Aboriginals settled on the land. There's still very much, although we can't physically see it, the ground itself is still very much of major interest to Puss Lynch. There are so many artifacts in this ground that show a timeline of settlement. So, and I mean, of course, I don't plan on doing anything there, but in 20, 40 years, when we sell this property, I would like to know that the next person is gonna, do you know what I mean? Like, I still feel like there is still invested interest in on this property. Because of what the ground holds. So I would like to circle back at a later date. Like I can assure everybody, we don't have to worry about it. I won't be digging anything up. It'll stay safely in its land because I value that. But it does show a period of settlement in Puss Lynch, and that's beautiful. That's history. And it would be a shame that if we just ignored that, and then in 20, 40 years from now, when people are building condominiums or condos, all this stuff's just dug up and gone. You know, it would be nice to see somewhere from now to the time in which a new owner will come into play, that something's been done to ensure. I'm not really sure. Maybe there's law with the archaeology report. I don't really know. Maybe there's already something protecting the stuff that's in the ground outside the Heritage Committee. But I would like to see that when the time comes that we leave this land, that stuff in the ground is protected, because it's, as it sounds right now, because it was not because it's not protected under the Heritage Act of Ontario, what would come of this stuff in the ground if we were to sell the property, right? Like I would like maybe for that to be thought of and maybe brought up at another meeting, or I'm not really sure, but I just wanted to touch on that, because although the physical structure is coming down, the land still holds very much more history than just the house that was the Calfast Stewart home, right? It shows the Aboriginals settling on the land, the early Europeans coming, you know what I mean? Like it showed there's so much in there that it would be a shame for us just to close the book and say, oh, well, a new owner has it, she's going to build a new house, let's do better on the next one. There's still interest here, right? And what if we bought this hoping to make it last again? So if we were to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it's going to require to remediate whatever stone we can from this home, I'd like to know that this is still a part of heritage. We took what, you know, the Calfast and Stewarts took from the land, and we also made it a part of our home with our own two hands. We're building this house ourselves. There are no contractors. We are the contractors, just as the Calfast family was, just as the Stewart family was, ours will be too. So in future time to come, the stone and the wood that came from the land so long ago will still very much be intact in this new home, plus the stuff in the ground. So it's just something to think about in, I guess, future years. So anyways, that's it. That's all.
Thanks,
I guess we
Stephanie.
can talk about engineering.
Thank you very much. Any further comments?
Well, I'm not sure how you're going to protect that stuff in the ground, because you're going to have to dig a pretty deep hole to put the foundation in for the new house.
No, we're gonna come right up to Whitcomb, and the stuff is all on Highway 6. It's already designated. I know exactly where it is on the site plan, and it will not be touched during construction.
Okay.
I value it very much. Right? Like there's not too many people that can say, hey, I have artifacts in my front yard from when the Aboriginals settled in this land, right? It won't be touched.
Well, Stephanie, be careful with that. Europe is just
Well, let's not tell anybody it's there.
littered with archaeological sites that are excavated.
Okay, let's not tell anybody it's there. Let's just
Well,
all make an effort to know that in the future.
You're entitled to do whatever you want with it, but
No, she's
you know,
not.
from an archaeological
That's what we're saying. This is what I'm hoping for. That
standpoint, it would be nice to see what's actually there. We do, you know, but that's again another story outside the purview of this meeting. But you know, thank you for your thoughts on that.
I think you guys can hold more power than you're sitting here thinking right now. You know, like there are lots of things that can be done in courts to preserve.
Oh,
your
no,
stuff,
Stephanie, no.
Right?
Let's not go down that road.
Oh, well, no, I'm just saying that.
Mary, you've got your hand up there. What you've got some
So
comments.
a couple of things. The archaeological site that is between the house and Highway 6
Mhm.
is under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Culture and whatever it is
Oh,
right
it
now. So
cannot be
that legally can't be disturbed, John. And as well,
No, at this point in time, Mary, but it's just, we don't live in forevers. Things change.
the other thing is that, Stephanie, in the past, what we've done, not we, but what has happened with other committees is when a historic property is being demolished for whatever reason, it's the demolition is photographed and documented so that, and I would be very happy to take on that role if you would be comfortable with it or ask you to do it. Often we ask homeowners so that every stage of that demolition is recorded, and the sorts of things that you're talking about are part of the, that log of that house, the record of that house. It's, it's sort of a sunset moment.
Yeah.
And if there are things that there very well may be things that surface that are not visible at the moment, but I would think that might be something you could do, and or we could assist you with. And so that there's some sense of completion with this
Mhm.
property and that it doesn't feel abandoned. I know it doesn't to you, but that it doesn't to the residents of Puslinch, or the local historians who cherish it so much.
Yeah. I've documented everything from the
Mhm.
time we
Great.
from before we closed.
Mhm.
I have hundreds of photos. When we were taking out the lath and plaster and the trim and baseboards, and we're going to honor the same style when we rebuild, but the corners, and again, I'm not in construction, but the detailing of the doors had little squares. Well, behind some of them, it's signed from 1916. So it's the only thing that's come, and 2 beer bottles. It's the only thing that we have found in the walls, or
Mhm.
anything that resembles, somebody once living there other
Mhm.
than the graffiti. But yeah, so we saved them. I set them aside. Again, it's just a little piece of wood with a pencil signature, Morriston 1916. But yeah, of course, and that's what I was talking about earlier with, I was thinking, if anything else, I know that there's that little heritage park beside us. I would be more than happy to even find somebody to make one of those bronze plaques of like like, when they, yeah, like where they carve into the plaque a picture of what was, and some of that, like we talked about that big granite stone we took out of the ground and having the one side, like a side flattened to it, and having the old Calfast Stewart home etched into it. And it's time of, because it came out of the ground like the whole house did, right? They literally just kind of built their foundation around it. So we've been talking about lots of ways that we could try and honor it outside of just reusing it on our brand new, like everybody else's house.
Mhm.
Right. So
Um, are you interested in further discussions around
yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm very much an advocate for interpretive panels, and I may be the only voice on this committee that is so enthusiastic about them, but those are essentially, two-dimensional panels, the kind you might see in an I don't know, an outdoor park, provincial park, where there's images and script, and it's just,
Yeah, like a monument.
yeah, well, less of a monument and more of a communication device
Yeah.
that shows what was there and why it was important, and anyway,
I'm open to.
I,
talking about it.
I very much appreciate your interest and energy and attitude, and I can't tell you how important that is at this stage, that we have a homeowner who's really on with the program. Yeah.
Thanks,
I'm
Mary.
pretty
Thanks,
disappointed,
Stephanie.
but
Courtney?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Mayor Sealy in our gallery in the attendee section, and he has his hand up requesting to make a comment. So with the chair's permission, if this is the right time, if perhaps we could receive Ms. Saliba's delegation, however the committee chooses to receive it, whether for information or whichever is at your discretion. And then with your permission, we could move Mayor Sealy over.
Thanks, Courtney. Greetings, Mayor Sealy.
Sorry,
Is not
Mr. Chair,
online yet?
not yet. Just procedurally, if appropriate, if we could,
Yes.
if the committee's done, if we could receive Ms. Saliba's delegation and we could send her back to the attendee section, and then we could bring Mayor Sealy in.
I so
thank you,
move.
guys.
Seconder?
A second.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. All in favor? Aye,
All right.
carried. Okay, Courtney, over to you.
Right, just one moment here, and I will move Mayor Sealy over.
Hello, everyone. Can you see me?
Yep.
I apologize. I'm on vacation with my family, but I felt it important to attend. Is this an appropriate time to go into my comments, Mr. Chair?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for attending.
I want to first start off by saying that I appreciate all the work that this committee does for, even this house, as it appears, it's going to come down. I do agree that we have to look at some options to us to strengthen some language to ensure that this doesn't repeat itself. It's extremely disappointing. I did not catch the delegation's delegation, so I'll have to go back. Courtney, I assume this is recorded similarly to our council meetings, but I'm a little concerned that there's an individual taking a lot of the blame for this circumstance, and that's the original developer, and they are not in attendance to defend themselves. And I feel there's equal amount of responsibility for this. I think that going forward, if we're going to have a heritage building, I'm looking at those photos of the shoring up, and it, to me, that doesn't look like anywhere near the appropriate amount of additional infrastructure in the building to ensure that there wouldn't be a collapse. Now, I'm not implying that this was an intended act, but along with giving us more teeth, we need to ensure that we have a set of standards that would ensure that if this wall needs to stay, that this is what you must do to ensure it doesn't, and we don't have oops, it fell down and we lose 200 years of history. I find it a little suspect about discussing already the new home when this just transpired over a week. So what it does mean is we as in the council, myself, along with your input, we need to strengthen up our language and get some policies in place and get a register going. I'm extremely disappointed that this house came down. So I just felt a little concerned that the developer was taking a lot of the responsibility and didn't have the ability to defend himself, and that there's equal blame on this one, but not with the Heritage Committee. So Matthew's probably cringing in his seat because I'm speaking like this, but I saw the passion in the members of the committee, how much work they've put in, and just to be like, oh well, we'll put up a new house. We can't let this happen again. So I will commit to this committee. I will do whatever it takes to facilitate that we strengthen this language, we get the register in place, and ensure that we can protect these stone structures or whatever the heritage building would be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Courtney, would you like to carry it forward from here? Or Jeff?
Just a question, Mayor Sealy, are you looking to stay on, or are you requesting we move back to the attendee section?
Courtney, yeah, you can just move me back to the gallery, please. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just with your permission, we do have our delegate with her hand raised, but perhaps if the committee decides, I know that our CBO is also here to speak to some of the structural reports. And perhaps the committee would like to do that prior to having the delegate speak again, but just a suggestion to consider.
Yes, if with the committee's permission, I'd like to hear the engineering or summary of the engineering work that's been done prior to hearing anything else at this point. If everyone's in agreement.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
As you can see, we've had a few reports here already from some engineers from SBM, the engineer on behalf of the owner. Visited the site shortly after they started the demo and part of the wall collapsed. They provided that report as soon as they could to me. They kind of let me know this was happening, and then I visited the site shortly thereafter. I actually dropped by there on Saturday to verify kind of what's been in the report, saying that it was quite unstable, unsafe to occupy. So first and foremost, I was looking to make sure that they were making it as safe as possible for the general public around it. So they had fenced the property. They had large hoarding fence in the front, and then they had another interior fence around the building itself. Having received the report from SBM recommending that walls that were going to collapse need to be kind of taken down, and maybe as a result of taking down the rest of the building, more of it will come down. We had GM Blue Plan do a peer review of that engineer plan just for our due diligence to make sure that we are covered from the township side, and if I was to go forward as a chief building official and issue an emergency order actually to demo it, we'd be covered in that way. As you can see from the pictures, it's in pretty rough shape. Even if you're not an engineer, you can see that the building is in poor shape, and having the floors dangling there and the roof, it's not a good situation for safety. And health and safety is the most important thing that I need to look after as a chief building official. And I certainly don't want to leave this fence. So I'm in agreement with what's been suggested in the reports that they need to come down, and it really is cost prohibitive for the owner to really try to retain what's there. I think the focus should be on salvage and commemoration at this point. But happy to answer anyone's direct questions if there are any. I'm not seeing any. Courtney, do I just pass this back to you, or?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if you wanted to just
Courtney,
canvass the members.
My audio was not good for that. Do any of the other committee members have any comments on Andrew's report?
I do. I have
Yes,
a
Mary.
question. When you use the term cost prohibitive, has the cost been analyzed of stabilizing the remainder section?
I don't know if the owner is undertaking that, but I just, from construction experience and what they need to do with really in order to make the building safe, they're going to remove the loose section We have a full front wall there that was relying on a mid-floor supporting that wall, and that's no longer there. And the wood that's in between the stone has deteriorated to the point that you basically have several hinges along that wall that could give out at any time. So the shoring would be a lot of money to be involved. I can't speculate on what that would be, but I know it wouldn't be cheap.
And may I ask another question?
Of course, Mary, continue, please.
Our mayor has suggested that there were two factors that contributed to the failure of that wall. One was the inherent instability caused by probably some original construction, and second, by deterioration, but also then by inappropriate support during the demolition of that brick addition, or whatever we want to call it. Is that also something that, Andrew, that you would identify, that the method of removal and shoring up could have been better?
Well, just to be clear, I am not an engineer myself, but any sort of restoration that would be undertaken would be supervised by an engineer, and they would provide the recommendations on any break scene during demolition and rehabilitation. But a common way of bracing would be to support each floor joist with some crib walls. From what I know, the owner had braced this kind of after it kind of all happened, so they were just doing their best to make sure there was no further collapse.
Right, right.
But at this point, no one should even enter the building. It's wholly unsafe. And the owner has already applied for a full demolition permit. And I think she's expressed certainly and fully willing to help with any preventative materials that could be recouped from the demolition.
Oh, thank you, Courtney. The audio with Mr. Holt is really blurry and fuzzy, and I'm wondering if in the recording of this meeting, you think it will be easier to hear.
Thanks, Mary. I noticed that a bit too. Andrew, is it a headset perhaps that you're using, or is it just the laptop audio? Is there any way to just see if that could be improved a little bit?
I am on a headset, so I've had multiple meetings today and it hasn't been a problem, but is it cutting in and out? Is that what's happening?
It more just sounds a little bit garbled.
Yeah, very distorted.
We do have the ability to produce a transcript from our videos if required, to make that a little bit easier if it's not audible, but the recording would sound like it sounds now, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further comments? I don't see any hands being raised. Okay, I'm not sure where we go from here, Courtney and Andrew. What's the next step? Do we need a motion to accept the engineer's reports as written?
Mr. Chair, are you talking about just next steps procedurally, or are you more referring to the CBO talking about next steps with the building?
Well, I think, well, the engineer's reports are pretty clear about that. Do we accept the engineer's reports? I mean, I'm not sure that we have any authority to approve or disapprove of the engineer's reports or make any comments thereon, other than to either accept them or reject them.
So a resolution could come from the committee to receive them for information if that's what's being done, and there's no direction coming from the committee. And that could be I believe we already passed a resolution to receive the report itself. So perhaps, Jeff, I'm not sure how the minutes are laid out, but if we need an additional one to just receive the reports and perhaps Andrew's verbal presentation.
Through you, Chair, when we passed the original, or sorry, when we moved and seconded the original motion, it was just to receive the report for information. And given that the engineering reports are a component or a schedule to my report, I think it's sufficient that we just use the original recommendation, that is, receive it as information.
Yeah, we have received.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I misunderstood how we had worded it originally. It sounded as if that we were approving the motion was to receive them, but we have received them. Okay, I'm good with that. Andrew, okay, I guess, I mean, do you need a resolution from the committee to accept the recommendations of the engineering report? I'm not quite sure what we want here.
I don't particularly need a resolution. I think you just need to receive it as information. As it's not on the register, I can issue a demolition permit based on the information I have already.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Any further comments? Courtney, did I understand that the delegate wished to make some closing remarks?
She does have her hand raised, so with the committee's approval,
Okay.
I can move her over.
Thank you. Again, my apologies, I can't see that. Please do.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
First of all, I just wanted to thank Mr. Seeley for sitting in on the message. I thought maybe since he wasn't at the beginning of the meeting, and maybe he hasn't had an opportunity to read the itinerary of this meeting, but I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself to him as a new member of his community. My name's Stephanie. I'm 34. I'm a mother of 5. I don't have a lot of money. This was not intentional. And the reasons we have new plans already is because we have a contract loan, a construction loan, one that requires us to meet timelines. Otherwise, we're left with covering interest. And again, with 5 children, we're just trying to delegate our budget accordingly so we can make this home next year. There was nothing intentional about this. And if anything was intentional, it was probably the failure to remediate this building to ensure its preservation. And as a new member of your community, one bringing 5 children to it, I'd like you to know that I absolutely love my community. I've always been on the PTA. I've always been a coach within sports towns teams. So I do hope that despite the speculation of this being intentional, you can go home tonight with your family and understand that I'm making this my home. And the intentions was not to tear it down. If it was, I wouldn't have spent $35,000 on an insurance policy that was due in full. If my intentions were on tearing this house down, we would have bought any other property like we have with the last 10 we've rebuilt. Our intentions were to be endeavorous, to challenge ourselves, to use my remedial work that I've spent time in insurance doing and put it to practice. And I'm sorry that I'm an emotional person, but I do sit here very disappointed in that welcome. To immediately deem us intentional in destructing
Excuse me, Stephanie, could I interrupt
I'm
you?
sorry, sorry.
No, please, I
I'm not
must
trying to
interrupt you.
do that, but the mayor had an opportunity to come and voice.
Right, sorry, Mr. Chair. Just
Thank
I've
you,
just
Courtney.
muted just for a moment, Ms. Saliba, just so that the chair could have an opportunity to speak because he's chairing the meeting.
I'm disturbed by what I've just heard. I'm insulted with what I've just heard. This committee did not set out to accuse anyone of anything. So if the delegate wishes to continue speaking, I would ask them to treat this committee with the respect it is due the individuals with the respect they are due, and please do not accuse us of things that are highly improper and totally uncalled for. Thank you. You may continue if you wish.
I apologize for that misunderstanding, and nowhere in what I said was I trying to accuse the Heritage Committee of anything. The mayor did come on here and say that he believes it intentional, that it's suspicious that we already have new plans for a new build. That was all I was referring to. I plan on working with you guys. I in no way meant any disrespect whatsoever. I was just saddened to hear that he deems it suspicious because we already have new plans. We were to have permits to continue with this build by September 1st for our construction lender. I'm sorry that when I heard him come and accuse two people that he has yet to meet, I mean, we've wanted to be a part of the Pushlands community for a very long time. And for our first interaction with the mayor to be that of pretty much saying that he sees it intentional, because who would already have new plans a week later? Well, people that have sold their soul to everybody to make this home happen for their children, that's who. We have a 3-year-old that's going to be starting school next year. It was my hope that she'd be starting school in our new community. So I did reply but that was not intended at the Heritage Committee whatsoever. Not at all.
Thank you, Stephanie. Your emotion is very clear and very heartfelt, but I think we're moving off topic here entirely for the reasons that all of us have
Don't
taken
believe
break
so.
from the holiday. So if we could just move on to the conclusion of this meeting, I think it would be appreciated. Jeff, have you got any further comments?
Are there no further comments for myself, Mr. Chair?
Courtney, any further comments?
No further comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any committee members have any further comments? If there are no further comments, I would ask for a motion to terminate or adjourn the meeting.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you. Thanks, Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Thank you all. Declare the meeting adjourned or terminated.